Hey guys, how's it going? This is Khavrion here with another battle report. This is for round 5 of the Vaulsc Tabletop Simulator League Season 4. It is going to be supplies, which is going to be me as Steel Phalanx versus PandaBeastMode as Tohaa. So the mission is supplies. Very well-known mission, probably my favorite mission in ITS 12 in terms of balance and play. If you guys play infiNity a lot, you probably are well aware of supplies, but I'm going to go over the scoring anyway. There are 3 supply boxes. They start in tech coffins located at the middle of the table. To open a tech coffin, you have to have a specialist run up and pass a whip roll. Doctors and paramedics get a bonus. And then you control the supply box and you can kind of pass it around. And at the end of the game, you get 1 point per supply box that you control, 3 points if you have more supply boxes than your opponent, and 2 points if your opponent doesn't have any supply boxes. Then there's 2 classifieds. So to me, this mission is very quintessentially infiNity. Somebody misplaced the Amazon packages, and we're going to kill each other to try to make sure that we're the ones that get them. Supplies actually has a lot of different potential strategies to it. If you're going first, you might try to seize control of the midfield, maybe grab a box or 2 while also damaging your opponent so that their ability to snatch boxes from you later on is limited. And if you're going second, you might try to eschew the middle of the board and instead just spend 3 turns softening up your opponent so that on the 3rd turn you can go kill their box holders and steal the boxes. Or you might try a different strategy, like just grab all 3 boxes on the 1st turn of the game and then hide behind your castle. So there's a bunch of different approaches. I end up going second, so I'm going to adopt a defensive, keep my cards close, and try to snatch boxes here and there type of strategy. Next, let's talk about lists. I am, once again, playing the Big Boy list by XNed. This is a really fun list. It's very thematic. It feels like you're playing, big damn Greek heroes from the Trojan War or something like that. It has a lot of strengths, which I think this matchup are going to showcase. That said, I'm not going to go into too much detail about the list right now. To just kind of give a brief highlight, you've got an Onomatargos of Akmon, Machaon, Phoenix, and Ajax, so, my 4 favorite heroes. Ajax is super tough, Phoenix has mid-6 and is really hard to pin down with his rocket launcher into smoke. Machaon has Eclipse, is a doctor, and Akmon has tactical awareness in addition to 2 wounds, so that's nice. You've also got Hector, who, in addition to being really tough and providing 3 orders, because he has Strategos and Lieutenant plus 1 order, he also has a Tinbot, which is going to be super relevant because the matchup is against Tohaa, and apparently Tinbots work against Tohaa Fairware tactics. Lastly, you have the man, the myth, the legend, Achilles. He is just fantastic. I don't need to say too much more about him. The only other thing that I do want to bring up is basically everyone except Akmon has stealth, which gives me, the Steel Phalanx player, a lot of freedom in determining when I'm going to engage with the indirect AROs from the Tohaa Fairware tactics. And here's my opponent's list. I'm playing against PandaBeastMode. He actually apparently was watching my battle reports, so thank you for that. That's flattering. I'm glad you're enjoying them. But fortunately for me, he was super busy in real life and so didn't have a lot of time in order to craft a list specifically to counter my list. I would be kind of curious what an anti-Big Boy list would look like, though, so maybe a future opponent will oblige. So let's go ahead and talk about what he has. He has 3 triads. Basically, he has this Gauriel, Sukuel, Makal triad. This is the offensive triad in Group 1. Then he has a Kamael, Kael'tar triad. This list basically ends up being defensive. Note that the Kamael is a hacker. We'll talk a little bit about that later, but it is sort of an interesting pick. The rest of Group 1 is a Chaxa, a Nikawul ambush unit. This is a viral sniper with MSV1 that has Sapper. That's actually a pretty interesting inclusion because MSV1 sees through smoke, and viral is kind of dangerous. I mean, I'm all shock immune, but viral's still dangerous. And then Janstar and Liberto Mind Layer. Then in Group 2, there is the Takuel with +1 order, a Kamael forward observer, a Makal, and then there is a diplomatic delegate and a Klipsos in hidden deployment. So the triads are pretty standard. Each one that intends to go out and do something has a Makal to throw a clip smoke, has some sort of gun, be that the Takuel with the combi rifle, or more specifically the Gauriel Spitfire, and then also drags around a specialist. Now, the specialists both are forward observers, and the Tohaa forward observers, for reasons that don't make a lot of sense to me, actually come with deployable repeaters. And what that means is that because my opponent is planning on moving these triads around anyway, if he happens to have a spare 4 inches of movement, he can put down a deployable repeater, which the Kamael hacker will be able to deal with. Now, this isn't likely to be a super big pain for me, But what it does mean is that if I have to do anything other than just move with stealth, then my opponent can be tossing isolates or targeteds on my guys. The other thing that's kind of interesting is that PandaBeastMode is a very good Tohaa player to my understanding, and the Tohaa are masters of indirect stuff with the Pharaoh tactics. So what this means is that he is basically going to be moving his Triads into buildings, into places where it's really obnoxious for me to get access to them, but which they have a lot of reach with their zone of control attacks. Specifically, he can start hacking Hector, who has a tin bot, but is still heavy infantry. And if he's got to spend 5 orders isolating Hector, then I'm really sad. I've been lost a lieutenant. I lose my 2 special orders for that. I could probably fix it with Akmon, but it's still a big hit on my turn. So fundamentally, what these deployable repeaters in the buildings force me to do is they basically force me to pay a lot of attention to where I am leaving Hector. I want Hector in the link to protect against the Pharaoh tactics in case I proc it, but I really, really don't want to put him in a position where when it comes to the Tohaa player's turn, he can run out with a deployable repeater, get within 8 inches of Hector, and put that down. It might be worth looking at just an example of what I'm talking about. So here's the map. I'm basically going to castle up over here, and he is basically going to have the Takawel Triad in this building. And so what I'd like to be able to do is I'd like to basically leave my castle and run across the back here and start shooting at his guys. I'd like to bring Hector with me so that I can be protected against any of the Pharaoh tactics that get blasted on me on those orders that I don't use stealth. But if I leave Hector basically anywhere within 8 inches of this building, which is like a pretty wide spread, then I can count on Hector getting oblivioned on the next turn. The same goes for this building. He doesn't actually end up castling inside this building, but he has another Triad over here, and if that Triad basically moves into that building, throws smoke with the McCall so that I can't see it, and then gets an 8-inch spread, then, you know, that's covering, I don't know, approximately this amount of territory. So the fact that he took the hacker and the fact that he took the deployable repeaters isn't that scary to me in the reactive turn. When it's my turn, it's not that scary because I've got stealth, and if he does isolate Hector, I have Akmon so I can fix him so it won't be in loss of lieutenant. But in terms of me having to defend against it, I basically have no choice but to try to make sure that Hector does not end up within 8 inches of those buildings, or else he's potentially at risk of getting isolated. So I thought it was an interesting inclusion. I don't know that it's necessarily the best inclusion. I'm not a Tohaa player. I don't have a lot of theory about what it costs in order to have all those deployable repeaters and all those Camail hackers, or just the one Camail hacker. I do know that taking the forward observer means you're not taking a paramedic, so you don't get the +3 bonus, you don't get the extra die, and if you fail to open a tech coffin on a single order, that's a price you paid to have those forward observers. But I don't think it's an automatic, immediate mistake list inclusion type thing. Before this matchup, if you had told me that you were thinking about going a hacking heavy Tohaa list, I would have assumed that you don't know what you're talking about. But having seen it, having specifically been afraid of it in this type of matchup, I think there's something interesting here that I might want to think a little bit more about. If there are any Tohaa players in the audience who have some comments that they'd like to drop or tell me about otherwise, I'd be kind of interested to hear them. Anyway, enough talk. Let's play. Here's my opponent's deployment. We have the Group 2 Harris Triad thing is right here. We have the Group 1 defensive Triad is over here, and we have the Group 1 offensive Triad is right here. So really hunkering down here in the left. Zooming in on them, we have the Kael'tar, Attacker, Kael'tar, Diplomatic Delegate, and then we have the McCall, Gabriel Spitfire, Sukhul FO, and then on the other side, we have just a McCall that's just kind of sitting there. I know you can't see him in that picture. And then you have the Takawel right there, and then there is something else also in here, a forward observer somewhere that I'm not currently seeing. On the other side, you have the Nikawel ambush unit. It sees this long line. It's actually not as oppressive as you might think. The lane is very narrow, and because of how the height works, it is not as clear to see all the time. It's pretty avoidable. He also sees this way, which Achilles in the future is going to have to worry about, and then protecting him is the Chaxa. Also over here, we can see the Liberto, and then the Clipsos is there in hidden deployment. So here's my deployment. If you've seen my previous battle reports, you know that I like to castle up. I castle up in this half. I have R2-D2 the Net Rod there. He makes his drop. I was trying to drop the other one maybe right here, but failed, so put him way over here, all by himself, but it's going to take a lot of orders to get over there and kill him, so maybe that's okay. And then basically everyone else is castled up here. I've got Phoenix watching some decent long-range arrows. I've got Ajax here watching that approach. I have Machaon here who is cracking the cover on this building so he can see if you try to go around. I have Akmon there who, in addition to peeking out and seeing the doorways, Akmon also will see up here, which actually turns out to be interesting. I didn't intend it that way, but it turns out to be interesting. And then I withheld Achilles and Hector. Hector goes down here. I do put Hector in the link. Hector can see Janstar. Janstar was withheld and dropped right there. And then I do put Achilles back here just watching Janstar as well. And that's my deployment. So I didn't take super many pictures as it happened during the first turn of the game. I was thinking a lot about what I was doing. We also had a few connectivity issues, which ended up being a little distracting, so I probably forgot to take some pictures there as well. Here what we're seeing is the aftermath, though, of the first turn. And I want to talk about this because I think it's really interesting, the Janstar attack. Now, Janstar is very good. What my opponent has done is he has withheld a Kael'tar, and he has withheld Janstar, and he deploys them both simultaneously. He used a command token to hold them both back. And so Janstar starts with Symbiont Armor, a Symbiomate, and a Symbio Bomb. The Symbiomate is going to give him Armor 9, BTS 9, and Total Immunity for 1 order. The Symbio Bomb is going to give him access to Fairware tactics, including, Eraser, which can potentially isolate. I think he's planning on using that on Hector if he can get the chance. And, of course, Janstar has light shotgun and shock mines and viral pistols. So just generally a super dangerous kit attached to a model that effectively has 2 wounds, and the first of those wounds is going to have a bunch of armor. Still, I'm quite tough, and I think it turns out that Janstar is not going to be able to obliterate this Steel Phalanx list in the way that it might be able to just take apart other lists with other opponents. Let's talk about what happened. Janstar starts right here. And I counter-deploy Hector here to see Janstar and Achilles here also to see Janstar. And at that time, Machaon was here, not in the link. Phoenix was also standing up and watching. So the moment that Janstar does anything, he is going to be looking at an arrow from Achilles. He's going to be looking at an arrow from Hector. He's going to be looking at an arrow from Phoenix. Now, I have to be a little bit careful here. I left Machaon out of the link because if Machaon eats 2 templates, he has about a 25%, 30% chance of dying outright, of failing both saves and dying. I really don't like that. Phoenix is staring down. Phoenix has about the same chance of dying outright, but if he does die, that's okay. But my opponent also has the Symbio Bomb, Symbio Mate, which is going to make it really hard to hurt this guy. So I don't necessarily want to waste my time shooting and then have him tank lots of things. So, from my perspective, it's still a little bit of a risky situation, but I'm feeling fairly confident about the situation, especially given that Hector is able to shoot Janstar right at the beginning. I'm specifically thinking that Hector's Burst 2 Plasma Rifle, the Plasma is basically going to be 1 armor save, 1 BTS save, and I can either deny cover or I can be damage 14, and it doesn't really care about the total immunity part of the Symbiont armor. And not only that, if I use the template mode, damage 13, he's got 9s, he fails on a 4 or lower, that's about a 20% chance, there's 2 dice. We're looking at something like a 1 in 3 chance that I actually wound Janstar through the Symbiomate. So Hector's actually, I think, pretty dangerous of an ARO if he can shoot Janstar, and he could basically be guaranteed to shoot Janstar because of the fact that, I can counter-deploy. Likewise, Achilles is really good at CC. He has a nanopulsar. He's got mimetism and lots of armor, and he dodges like a champion. So Achilles is basically going to dodge into CC with Janstar or something, just be really annoying to Janstar whenever Janstar tries to do anything. So what happens is he spends 1 order on Janstar, and he basically activates Janstar and runs over to here. He's trying to get out of Achilles' line of fire, but he just doesn't have the inches in order to do that. In so doing, he is going to trigger an arrow from Machaon, an arrow from Achilles, and an arrow from Phoenix, and an arrow from Hector. So Machaon, not on the link, dodges. Achilles, I could Nanopulsar, but I'm thinking I don't want to get shot by viral pistols for free out of cover, so Achilles also dodges. And then I have Phoenix and Hector both shoot. I'd like to have Phoenix dodge and Hector shoot because Phoenix is, right there about to get templated, but I don't want to kick him out of the link. So I have Hector shoot, I have Phoenix shoot. What happens is that he double templates Phoenix. Phoenix makes one of the saves and fails one of the saves, so he takes a wound and goes into BUI and drops prone. Hector shoots. Hector actually crits and hits. And also Janstar was out of cover. So Janstar is looking at 5 saves from the Plasma, and then 2 more saves from the Nanopulsar from Phoenix. And all of these are ignoring cover, so I'm thinking Janstar's toast. He actually only fails one of them, and so he goes inactive Symbiont Armor, so that was fairly lucky on my opponent to make those armor saves, but it was lucky for me to crit. So that's what my opponent does once. He spends 1 order doing this, and now he's thinking, gosh, I gotta be careful. Janstar is not in the best position right now. Let's go back to this picture to kind of see what happens next. What he is then going to do next is he's going to try to get smoke to cover Janstar, because if he can get smoke on Janstar, then Janstar can try to use that Symbio Bomb on Hector without immediately dying. He is going to take that group 2 Triad, which is here, and they're going to move into this building. The Takawel Lieutenant is basically going to end up in this corner, and I think he's also going to put a repeater down there, which ends up being a little bit annoying, but so they camp out here. Now, his plan actually had been to use the McCall upstairs to run forward and throw Eclipse Smoke through these windows. The problem is, quite unintentionally in a lot of ways, I have Akbon staying there, and Akbon has Panzerfausts. So my opponent is thinking, there's no way that I can stand up and take unopposed Panzerfaust shots from Akbon. That doesn't make any sense. That's just going to get my McCall killed. It's not reliable, and that's not something that he wants to do, especially if the McCall is going to be trying to throw smoke to cover Janstar. That's going to be, throwing smoke outside of 8 inches. It's going to be on 10s. I'm going to be shooting back 2 on 13s with Panzerfausts, and those numbers are going to start to add up, and it to be fair, it kind of does make sense. So instead, what he decides to do is he gets up there and he scoots prone, and then he uses the Takawel, who is his lieutenant with 2 orders, and the Takawel moves into this corner, and the Takawel drops Mirror Ball onto Achilles. The first order, we both fail. Achilles gets a dodge, and the Takawel gets the Mirror Ball. We both fail. The second order, we both succeed. So this is the Takawel's Mirror Ball, and then Achilles has dodged to here, so Achilles can still see Janstar. That done, Janstar decides to activate. He's just thinking, you know what, I'll just do whatever I can. He puts 2 shotguns into Achilles, and there was a net rod here. Achilles decides to Nanopulsar him back. Janstar fails the Nanopulsar save. Achilles takes 1 wound, and the net rod fails both saves and dies. So that's pretty much it for the Janstar run. Now, to give my opponent some credit, he spent 2 Group 1 orders doing that, and he spent some Group 2 orders doing that, but the Group 2 orders were mostly spent getting the indirect defensive Triad up into this building over here, which is going to be really problematic for me. So he hasn't actually spent a lot of resources doing this, and well, yeah, he's put a wound on Achilles, and yeah, he's killed a net rod, and yeah, that might not seem like a lot of stuff to do. The fact of the matter is that it isn't a loss of the whole first turn. It's basically just taking Jan, realizing that Jan isn't really well suited to the current circumstance, and spending him as best as he can. The only other thing I might have considered is using Eraser on Hector. I don't know what the odds are. I haven't run the numbers. They're not great because of Hector's Tinbot, but if it succeeds, then Hector is isolated. I'm in lost lieutenant, and I'm really annoyed. Going for the reliable net rod kill, not necessarily a bad call, but maybe isolating Hector is better. One other thing he does with the remainder of his Group 1 orders is, remember C-3PO landed over here. He and R2-D2 had evidently decided to separate. R2-D2 wanted to go hang out with the Jawas or whatever happens in Episode 4. The Liberto basically runs all the way over here. It costs basically 4 Group 1 orders in the irregular, and he barely makes it there, and he puts 2 shotgun templates into the net rod. The net rod dodges, but unfortunately his Fizz is 0, so he can't possibly succeed the dodge, and he fails both and dies. The only other thing he does is he spends the hidden deployment order on the Calypsos to appear and grab that box. So that's my opponent's first turn. I think the major takeaway lesson for me right now is that the usual first turn attack piece of a Tohaa player, which is Janstar, really just bounces off the big boy list as it is deployed by me in this circumstances. So let's talk about my turn. Achilles wounded Janstar, and so is frenzied. One of my classifieds is Predator. So the first thing Achilles does is he frenzies into Janstar and punts Janstar's unconscious corpse into outer space. Remember, thanks to the FAQ, coup de grace does count for Predator. The next thing that I do is I form a duo with Achilles and Akmon, and basically Akmon is going to move up to here. This picture is actually at the end of my turn, but it works pretty well for the start of my turn. Akmon's going to move up to here, and using his tactical awareness order is basically going to slingshot Achilles as far as I can get. So Achilles started here, frenzied to here, and then Achilles is basically going to run all the way over here. The next thing that Achilles is going to do is a little bit of a song and dance. The Nicol can see this lane, and the Eclipsos is right there holding a box. But as you can see, the lane is fairly narrow. So Achilles is going to make use of going prone and cautious move and all that stuff. And he's basically going to run over to the Eclipsos. Now, at that particular moment, when I get to the Eclipsos, I don't want to get seen by the Nicol, and I actually can accomplish that. What I should have done is basically declared a close combat and then moved prone into base-to-base contact with the Eclipsos, but I am not someone who really thinks a lot about 1.1.1. I don't know how much Corvus Belli intended, and I'm not playing with 1.1.1 in mind. I don't really like these speculative arrows and speculative CC attacks and all that stuff. I get it, I understand the motivation for it, but I'm just not sure the extent to which it's actually intended by Corvus Belli, and I don't want to learn lessons that are going to get changed the next time that somebody posts something on the forums. So what I do is I try to dodge into base-to-base with Eclipsos. The Eclipsos manages to make its dodge and dodges into such a fashion that the only way for Achilles to get into CC is for the is if the Nicol saw. But that actually does turn out to be okay. I basically take Achilles, run into base-to-base contact with the Eclipsos. The Eclipsos puts it down to bind. The Nicol takes a single shot on a 15, and the Nicol actually misses. Achilles is then able to punt the Eclipsos into space and pick up the supply box. So I think I was being a little bit flippant. I do think I got a little bit lucky under these circumstances, but I do kill the Eclipsos. Eclipsos puts down a mine, I pick up the box and run away, and the mine goes off, and Achilles takes a wound. So, there is some justice in the world. After that, basically, Achilles runs over to here. Again, I should have used the speculative CC thing. I was hiding behind this truck, and the Liberto couldn't see me. I could have, declared CC and then run into base-to-base. But again, not my thing right now. So I use conventional tricks to cautious move to stand behind the Liberto. Then I move in behind the Liberto and cut his head off. So I've basically killed Eclipsos and a Liberto, so I really haven't killed all that much, but my opponent spent his first turn killing 2 net rods and picking up a box, and I've basically gone and stolen that box. So the thing actually does look pretty solid for me right now. The only other thing I do is I reform the link with Machaon in it, Machaon, Hector, Ajax, Phoenix, and I have Machaon run up and get into base-to-base contact with Phoenix. Phoenix stands up, goes down the ladder to get that silhouette contact, and then comes back up here to be standing there, and I fix Phoenix's NWI, so he is now healthy again. Absolutely one of my favorite tricks in Steel Phalanx, and also let me accomplish a classified. I had Experimental Drug. Alright, so now it's my opponent's turn 2. He is looking at something like 7 orders in Group 1 and 4 orders in Group 2, some of which are irregular. So he's thinking that with only 7 orders, yes, he could go out and attack with the Galrail, but he's going to get stuck out of position. He just doesn't have the orders to run out and then run back safely and actually shoot at something. So instead what he's going to do is he's going to try to grab the boxes. And if he can grab both boxes and get back to a defensive position, then maybe this Triad over here can slow me down and prevent me from actually being able to take the boxes off their dead bodies. So here we can see that approach. The first thing he actually does is he uses his Group 2 in order to long bomb some smoke down with the Machaol. The Machaol puts smoke down here and smoke down here, so Phoenix can no longer see, Ajax can no longer see, Hector can no longer see, and that gives this and this as open and able to grab. He is then going to start running out, so he runs out to here. He actually fails to grab the box on the first time. He rolls like a 20, whip 14 on the forward observer. But, didn't take a paramedic, so we did talk about this at the beginning. Failing is something that can happen, and if your plan relies on not failing, then you've got a problem. So we spent a lot of time thinking about what to do here, and ultimately my opponent decides, and I think he had 4 or 5 orders left at this stage. He's thinking, it's going to take me 2 orders at least to run over to before I can start pushing that button. Then I'm left with only 2 or 3 orders to get to safety, probably 2. If I get unlucky, then only 1 order to get to safety. He's thinking that's just not happening. So what he's going to do is he's going to take this Triad and he's going to run back to here, tuck the Superwell into this corner, and why not? He's going to leave some deployable repeaters along the way, which I think they're not going to matter, but why not, right? It's fine. And here is sort of a top-down view of where we end up. The Sukwul is here with the box standing up. The McCall is there prone, and then behind there is the Gaurel Spitfire. The defensive Triad with lots of indirect ARO is over there. And we have the other Triad over here. He does at the last second actually move the Tohaa Diplomatic Delegate to here. I'm not sure why the Tohaa Diplomatic Delegate moved. I think it was just to get maybe in a better position to run somewhere else. I'm not sure what the purpose of moving that was. Previously, it was able to drop Eraser in like this zone of control, and then after moving, the Diplomatic Delegate is only able to drop Eraser in this zone of control. So actually, I do kind of think that moving it back was kind of a mistake. I now don't have to deal with that Eraser. But the flip side is that Eraser only isolates me. I've got Akmon in the link. I could just fix it, and I've got a tin bot, so he's going to be dropping Eraser on like a 10. So I could kind of ignore a little bit and not worry too much. So it's not necessarily a big deal to move this guy back, but I do think it is a little bit of an unforced error under the circumstances. So that's my opponent's turn 2. It is now my turn 2. Using this picture, I can describe what I would like to do. I am really, really tempted to take my link and just run over here and kill all of these guys. It's 3 orders. They're relatively undefended. I can just throw Smart and cut all their heads off in melee. The Tohaa Diplomatic Delegate, maybe I'll go for that one first. I can even shoot it, so that's not a problem. It would gut him of 3 orders, and it would leave me in a really solid position to just attack wherever his boxes are. But if I get unlucky, if I end up being out of position, if I'm not exceptionally careful with Hector, if I don't kill this hacker, then I'm going to be in a really, really risky position. And I think the game is going well for me right now, and I don't want to risk it. In particular, I absolutely cannot afford to have my link stuck here with either the Diplomatic Delegate or the hacker still alive, because then they'll just walk over and they'll isolate Hector, and I'll be on Lost Lieutenant on my last turn, and I won't be able to steal whatever boxes he has left. So I'm really tempted to be aggressive. I think this is a golden opportunity, but I decide to play it safe. I think that was the right call. It obviously works out for me in the long run, as we'll see, but it was tempting. It was really tempting. Instead, what I'm going to do is I am basically going to run up and grab a box, run around here and take a precious few shots. This Sukwul is exposed, so that's kind of nice. And then I'm going to retreat back to safety. It's going to take me like 4 orders of straight running in order to get to safety, but that's what I'm going to do. And that's my second turn. Here is the only picture that I took actually as I ran along. Here you can see where Machaon threw the smoke. This targeted, I think, belongs to Machaon. I don't exactly remember who got targeted, but here we have Phoenix, who's taking a long shot at this link. He wants to throw smoke with the McCall so that, I only have 1 shot at this, but the problem is that if he throws smoke with the McCall, then the Sukwul also has to shoot back, and the Sukwul is going to be at -12. So the Sukwul is 2 dice on 1s, and he rolls like a 15 twice. He just misses, and I hit him twice. I'm using fire. It's damage 14, and the fire just burns him right up. I think it burns him to unconscious. I do have to be careful in this moment because the Diplomatic Delegate is right there, and I didn't bring Akmon because Akmon doesn't have stealth. But because of 1.1, I can basically measure the zone of control on dudes. Yes, it has to be after I move, but if I'm careful, and I was careful, I can be a lot more confident about whether I'm going to end up in 8 inches or not. And I, basically don't end up in 8 inches except maybe with the hacker, and I don't really care about the hacker on Phoenix. And yeah, we run back to this defensive position. Looks like Machaon was the one that got hacked. The Enomatarkos, I do reform it on Akmon. It was my last command token, but I want it on Akmon, and I'm going to leave Machaon behind because Machaon has the box, and I'm thinking on turn 3, having Akmon in there with his Tactical Awareness Order is nice, and I do actually need the Tactical Awareness Order on Akmon in order to get Phoenix back up here. I run out of regular orders like here. Maybe I have 1 left. I don't exactly remember. And I also wanted to move Achilles to a slightly more defensive position. So I now have 2 boxes, and I am castled up. This brings us to my opponent's turn 3. He has like 6 orders in group 1, and he has lost his Triad over here. And it's basically a Gaurel and a McCall. And he also has this defensive Triad over here, but he doesn't really have the command tokens in order to flip it into group 1 and be effective or anything like that. And he's looking at this board and he's thinking, there is absolutely no way that I'm going to be able to assail this castle. So he's thinking he's got to pick up his own box off of the unconscious body here. He has rescue as a classified, so he's thinking he could do that. And then he's going to have the Gaurel run up over here and maybe try to put Achilles in the ground and then maybe get lucky and figure something else after that. I do agree that my opponent's options at this juncture are slim. So I think my opponent is in fact making the best of a really bad situation, but I do think that situation is bad. The first thing my opponent does is he long bombs some smoke down here. So this is going to allow the Galrail to run across this way so that Phoenix doesn't see. I think that's clever. McCall's throw smoke 16 inches on -3, burst 2. So it's like on 10s, but there's 2 dice, so there's a 75% chance of it getting down. So he's going to throw smoke there. And then I also think he ends up throwing smoke here as well later on to move out defensively. With the smoke down, what he ends up doing is he runs the Galrail over to here. He basically ends up with 1 order left standing right there, and he just doesn't know that with 4 inches whether he's going to be able to see Achilles, and if he sees Achilles, maybe the Spitfire isn't necessarily going to be able to put Achilles in the ground. Instead, what he decides to do is he decides to run forward and use the Symbio Bomb to hit me with Endgame. We know that's in range because Achilles tried to dodge earlier, and it was something like 10 inches away. So it's burst 2 on 14s versus a reset, burst 1 on a 12. If it succeeds, damage 14, BTS and breaker. Achilles is BTS 6, so he's basically saving on a 12. And what happens is Achilles does end up just successfully resetting. He rolls a 10, and the Galrail can't beat that. But even if the Galrail had gotten 1 through, Achilles might tank it, and even if Achilles goes unconscious, my Link should have no problem running over here and stomping this Galrail flat and picking up the box again. So this was the play. I think it was the right play. I think it was the only play that my opponent had, but it doesn't really amount to anything, and I don't think that should surprise us all that much because it's just a Galrail, and it's not that fast. And that's pretty much it for my opponent's turn. So he has 1 box. He has Rescue, he thinks, in the bag because he picked up his unconscious Sukuul, and he, at this stage, is probably going to secure the HVT. But I've got 2 classifieds done, and one of them's Predator, which is worth an extra point. I've also got 2 boxes. And last but not least, because I'm playing this on a Friday, it took us a long time to get this game scheduled. I actually know what the tournament scoring kind of situation looks like. And I know that my next game is going to be decided entirely based on tournament points. Objective points aren't going to be a big deal. So it is late for my opponent. We both have other things that we kind of need to do with our day. It's been some time spent. And so ultimately what I kind of decide is, look, I can just call it here and have an 8-3 win. Or I could try to spend my orders and maybe run all the way across the board and maybe kill the McCall and maybe take the last box. But is that what happens if I get unlucky? I mean, I'm not going to bring any boxes out, but I don't know. It seems like an unnecessary risk when I know that tournament points are what's going to matter, not objective points. So I do actually basically decide to say, look, I'm just not going to spend any orders on my turn 3. I have my 2 boxes. I have my classifieds. I don't need to do anything else. And we do decide to call it. So that was the game. To give a brief recap, I think that the game was very much decided by the lists that were chosen. My opponent in the list that he brought really had nothing that could scare my Steel Phalanx Big Boy list. The Galrail is too slow, and the Spitfire is too non-threatening. Maybe he could put Phoenix in the ground, but it's just as likely that Phoenix takes a wound and falls prone. And then what? Is he going to shoot Ajax with that Spitfire? I don't care. Is he going to shoot Hector? Again, I've got armor 5. I'm in cover. And so I think that a lot of this was, in fact, just decided by the fact that my opponent didn't really have any tools that could threaten the big boy list. Another thing that did mildly decide this is there were a couple of circumstances where I ended up getting lucky isn't the right word, but not unlucky. Phoenix didn't die from the 2 light shotgun shots going into him. He could have failed both saves and died. That would have been unlucky for me, but it would have been bad. Achilles was able to dodge out of the mirror ball and therefore was able to use a nanopulsar to put Janstar unconscious. That could have been bad. I could have gotten unlucky there and, stuck in the mirror ball. I dodged in 12, so, the odds are pretty good that I'll make it out of there, but, you get the idea. That said, during the game, I think my opponent, given the matchup, given the circumstances, played a very solid game. He was extremely conscientious of being overextended. I've played this big boy list a lot. My opponents have often run out to try to attack the big boy list, put some wounds on dudes, but not killed anyone, and then ended up with the lion's share of their attack pieces staring right down the nose of Ajax and everybody else. And that's a huge win for me. My opponent did not make that mistake. My opponent was very careful about moving out and falling back. Similarly, I think my opponent was clever in the use of the indirect arrow. It didn't amount to much in this particular game, But that doesn't say that it can't have amounted to much. It did make me be scared of leaving Hector too far out there. It did force me to return to my, safe castle every single time. So, the choice of the hacker, while I initially would have thought was really just, not a good choice in Tohaa, color me intrigued, color my interest peaked. I think really the only mistake in some senses, if we were to take this list but change it around just a little bit, I would have said put Janstar in Group 2 and put the Calypsos in Group 1. If the Calypsos is in Group 1, then the Calypsos could have grabbed this box and then run back to safety. That's instead of using the Liberto to run all the way over here and kill this single net rod. Then Janstar spends 2 orders. He only spent 2 orders on Janstar, and I think that was a reasonable amount. And, maybe hopes to get lucky on the shotgun shots, or maybe takes out a net rod, puts a wound on Achilles, gets lucky on an eraser on Hector, something like that. So then Janstar Group 2 can spend only 2 orders trying to do whatever damage Janstar can. So to summarize this analysis, I do think that a large part of this game was decided by the fact that nothing in my opponent's list could get through the wall of bronze shields that was this particular Steel Phalanx list. In addition to those high armor and all that other stuff, I have stealth and I have tin bots. So the normal Tohaa Fairwear tactics, which I was worried about when I was going into this matchup, turned out to be a lot less threatening than I was expecting them to be. I did have to be careful. I could not afford to leave Hector out to potentially get isolated either by the diplomatic delegate or by the hacker. But, that's my mistake to make. And in this particular game, I didn't end up making that particular mistake. Maybe I learned something from the last battle that I ran where Hector almost got isolated. Anyway, that pretty much wraps up this battle report. Thanks to my opponent, PandaBeastMode, for playing a fun game, and also for watching the battle reports on this channel, and for sending me the list so that I could make a battle report about it. If you have different memories or have other discussions you want to have in the comments, I think that's something that we can do. Otherwise, thanks for watching, folks, and take care.